In the beginning was Daytona.
Here we go.
The birthplace of speed, the launch pad of legends, the great American race.
Oh, they're in the wall.
It's always been,
Keep digging, stay in the gap.
and will always be, the proving ground for greatness.
Let's go, boys.
Every driver looking to be remembered. Every fan looking for something they'll never forget. Secure your seats now at Daytona500.com.
Roll Tide and welcome to this Tuesday edition of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. This is Roger Hoover. Great to be with you in our Tuscaloosa studios as we're getting set for Week 7 of the college football season. Crimson Tide off to a 5-1 start, and we're going to talk not only about the Texas A&M win that Alabama had on Saturday, but the Arkansas game coming up this Saturday here in Tuscaloosa. We'll go through everything coming up on our show today, thanks to our friends at RJ Young. RJ Young is the official technology solutions provider of Crimson Drive. They've given us a smart board to go through everything coming up on the show. We'll start with a one-on-one conversation with the SEC Defensive Lineman of the Week. Justin Eboigbe had a great performance against Texas A&M and helped seal that victory in the ballgame coming on Saturday. Then we'll take a look at our booth cam highlights from the Royal Furniture booth cam. Chris Stewart, Tyler Watson, the call of all the key moments, including a few that involved Justin Eboigbe from Saturday at Kyle Field. Then we'll hear from the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Nick Saban, with Coach's Checklist as he sets the table for what's coming up this week against Arkansas. And then one of our Alabama Legends of the Week, our honorary captain, is former Crimson Tide quarterback Allen Gray. He led the Crimson Tide to a 1981 SEC championship. Great stories about Coach Bryant coming up with Allen Gray. Last but not least, we'll be visiting with Corey Reamer from our last night's edition of Crimson Tide Rewind from Baumhauer's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills. Some good thoughts from Corey on everything Alabama football, including the win against those Texas A&M Aggies. Again, it was a fun victory for the Crimson Tide. 6 points, stressful at times. We saw Alabama down by 7 at halftime, only allowing 3 points in the second half as the Tide rallied for 16 second half points to get that 6-point victory. And now the Crimson Tide, you can say it, in the driver's seat in the SEC West at a perfect 3-0. Got to keep playing great football. Still 5 SEC games left on the schedule, but Alabama in a good spot, off to a good start at a perfect 3-0 in SEC play. How about Will Reichard? He was named the SEC Special Teams Player of the Week because not only was he solid in place kicking for the Crimson Tide, but when punter James Burnip went out with injury, Reichard stepped up to the challenge and punted for the first time since he was a freshman in 2019. Great performance by the Hoover native Will Reichard. Then Justin Eboigbe, who we'll talk to in just a few moments for our one-on-one conversation. He was also honored by the SEC as the Defensive Lineman of the Week. Crimson Tide soccer team, they were also in action this past weekend. Great victory last Thursday. Alabama with a 2-1 win against Auburn, a late rally to make sure they held on to the Iron Bowl trophy for the 4th straight year, so roll tide to that. Last Sunday, they were also in Bryan College Station, ended up falling to Texas A&M by a 3-1 final score, so a tough loss for Alabama. They'll try and bounce back coming up on Friday the 13th against the LSU Tigers. 7 o'clock start time, part of all the homecoming fun that's coming up here on campus. If you can't make it, watch SEC Network Plus with Haley McDonald and some other guy. Yeah, yours truly. We will have the broadcast coming up on Friday. Volleyball team, they were on the road as well this weekend on Sunday. Unfortunately, fell to the Florida Gators by 3 sets in that match. So now Wednesday, tomorrow, they'll try and bounce back at home against Missouri. 7 o'clock start time. Make your way to Foster Auditorium for all the volleyball fun. Baseball and softball also will be active with some fall ball scrimmages for the baseball team against the Auburn Tigers. Again, that's going to be a lot of fun on Friday. Then the softball team, they will have fall ball on Sunday at 1 o'clock after Wallace State. So again, a huge weekend coming up, even though it's Alabama football, soccer, and volleyball active in competition right now. If you love baseball and softball, great opportunities to come out and see them this weekend is, again, part of all the homecoming fun that we're going to have here in Tuscaloosa. Someone that had a lot of fun in Bryan College Station was Justin Eboigbe. Great performance against Texas A&M and a very good offensive line. He joins us as one of our 2 one-on-one conversations this week. Roger Hoover now joined by not only Alabama defensive lineman Justin Eboigbe, but the SEC Defensive Lineman of the Week. Justin, roll tide, congratulations on that honor. What led to a great performance for you last week?
Just realizing where I was at this time last year and just being grateful and just showing the fruits of my labors and how far I done came and how hard I done worked and just, not trying to prove people wrong, but trying to prove myself right.
And going back to that last game against Texas A&M, you had to hit that led to that safety to help Alabama seal the victory. Just take us through that play.
Going that play, I knew that before the game, I knew that I was looking at my pass rush plan on what things could be susceptible for the tackles and stuff like that. Early in the game, I was able to hit the left tackle with a bull, stab and then go inside. So I was like, let me see if I can get on the right side against the right tackle, and it held up true, and I was able to get home.
You certainly were. A great victory for the Crimson Tide. A really strong performance overall by your teammates on the defensive line. How have you seen this group get better as the year's gone along?
It's just that continuity. Each and every day, we know that during the week it starts Tuesday and Wednesdays. That's the hardest days of preparation for us. And just understand that it starts with us. How the team goes, how we go. And that's something that we try to do, and that's something we try to build on each and every week.
Last year was a disappointing end of the season with the injury. How'd you work your way back to make sure you're good to go for this year?
Having my mental in the right place, knowing that one day it was going to come to where I'd be able to come back. And when that time came, I was going to, look at it as a great opportunity to show and prove myself right, and prove those who thought that I could be where I could be right, and prove the ones who didn't think I could do it, prove them wrong.
Who are some of the most important people around the facility in your rehab process?
I would say Jeff Allen, Jeremy Giselle, Coach Roach, UJ Johnson, people that I spent time with during my recovery and coming back process. Having them to go along with me, get me to this point was very pivotal on my road to recovery.
How much do you like playing for Coach Roach? What does he bring to this team?
He brings that understanding of, somebody this is alma mater. He knows what it takes to be successful. He was not only here, as a player, but also, he was around during the early Saban years where he had guys like John Allen, Dalvin Thomason, and all them guys, so where he know what it takes to win. He know what it means to, be a truly good Alabama defensive lineman, because he done seen it and coached it and been around it.
What's the challenge going to be like this week getting ready for Arkansas, especially with another mobile quarterback in KJ Jefferson?
Just making sure everybody on our P's and Q's, making sure that, somebody has the quarterback in the run game take it, somebody has the running back in the run game in a read option situation, knowing that we have communication between the D-line and the linebackers to knowing who has who, and also being stout in the run game when we get counted. Any zone cut, anything like that in the run game, as, taking on doubles, combos from the O-linemen. And, just try and make them one-dimensional.
Justin, we look forward to seeing you play on Saturday. Thank you for joining us. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Crimson Drive is driven by NASCAR, and don't miss out on the event of a lifetime. The Daytona 500 is kicking off the NASCAR regular season on February 18th, 2024. Be there and experience the energy, excitement, and power as drivers battle it out at nearly 200 miles per hour in the Great American Race. Bring your whole family and watch as drivers test the limits of speed. Purchase your tickets today at Daytona500.com. We continue on Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR, and still looking back to that great victory on Saturday against Texas A&M. We had a lot of fun at Kyle Field inside the Alabama Credit Union broadcast booth. Always, we have our Royal Furniture booth cam streaming live on Facebook and YouTube. Great way to interact with fellow Crimson Tide fans in the chat. And again, just keep up with the broadcast and kind of see what we're up to during the game as Alabama picked up a very important road victory. Here are the booth cam highlights from Saturday at Texas A&M.
Into it, it's high into the air, and it is going to be fair caught in the end zone for a touchback. One man split in the slot to the right. Quarterback keeps himself. Pressure coming, passes broken up, and Bama turns the Aggies away. What a play defensively, Dallas Turner. Snap, spot, and kick are all completed and perfectly done so. Will Riker boots it through from 39 yards, and we are tied. 3 wideouts in formation. Single setback. Snap coming. Pass thrown. Catch made. Burton. First down. Move the 6 for the Crimson Tide.
I think we got a matchup that's very favorable right now that Tommy Reese has found. Jermaine Burton is absolutely wearing out Josh DeBerry. He's able to gain a step on the deep passes and create separation on some of the outs.
Of Milroe. Now an empty set as he goes in motion left. Bama looking deep again. Got a man wide open. Bond. Catch at the 5. Into the end zone. Touchdown Alabama. Isaiah Bond, 52 yards on the strike from Jalen Milroe. Alabama takes a 10-3 lead thanks to Bond. Isaiah Bond here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
This defense has to understand, just like at South Florida, hey, the game is on your shoulders. Whether you like it or not, you have to keep this a one-possession game and get us into the fourth quarter.
Pistol formation. Johnson looking, pressure coming up the middle. Backpedals, throws. That one is almost picked off. It was picked off. Caleb Downs, his second interception of the year, and Bama takes it over at the Aggie 39-yard lines. Bama runs it right side with Jace McClellan. He'll get to the 30. He'll get inside the 25. He'll get all the way down to the 23 as the pile moved with him. First down, Alabama. 3rd and 14. 3 wideouts left, 1 right. Milroe on the low snap. Looking, bouncing, firing towards the end zone. Burton, catch. Is he in bounds? Yes! Touchdown, Alabama. Jermaine Burton able to beat Tyreek Chappelle, the corner, for the 15-yard touchdown grab. Now trying to take the lead again. Play action. Milroe looking deep. He's got a man down there. Burton makes the catch. He's brought down at the 20. But Alabama inside the red zone again.
I tell you, our Alabama receiving corps hadn't had a great season necessarily with creating separation and getting a lot of explosive plays. Didn't have any last week. But today, they have absolutely owned these corners for Texas A&M. And anytime that we can catch them rotating into a single safety coverage, we really take advantage on the perimeter.
Up at 1, they just get it off in time. Fires, quick slant, Burton, 10, 5, end zone, touchdown Alabama! Jermaine Burton on the 19-yard reception and run after the strike from Jalen Milroe, and Bama is back on top. The snap, the spot are good. The kick is blocked, and Bama's got it. Bama's got it. Foot race right now. Braswell, 35, 30. Nobody commit a penalty. He's in. Touchdown, Alabama. But dadgummit, there is a flag back at midfield. 1st and 10. 3 wideouts left. Johnson will look that direction. Now he's looking across the middle. Now he's looking up at the sky because he gets brought down back at the 6-yard line. Tim Keaton the 3rd, bringing him down for another sack. That's the 3rd by the Bama defense today. Clock moving. 6 minutes to go from his own end zone. He's down. He's down. Ball is loose. Who's got it? Who's got it? Officials talking it over.
Nobody in the area. Intentional grounding in the end zone.
No timeouts left for the Aggies. Bama by 6 with the ball on 3rd and 7. Milroe, play action, tuck it away, he fires it, and it's caught. McClellan, 40, McClellan, did he get to the first down? He did! Wow, wow, wow. Jalen Milroe looked like he was going to get sacked, looked like he was going to fumble. Instead, he looks like the hero if it's a legal catch. Not
We continue on Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR, and where will you be on game day? Be a part of the action with a premium reserve tailgate from Game Day Done Right. Get your group together, pick your game and tailgate package, add on the catering, the beverages, all the other tailgating amenities, and Game Day Done Right will take it from there. Enjoy all the fun of game day with zero stress. Visit GameDayDoneRight.com to reserve your tailgate today. For your next tailgate, just add people. Game Day Done Right is the exclusive provider of reserved tailgating opportunities for the University of Alabama and offers packages for all group sizes for a single game or for the entire season. And we're happy that the Crimson Tide will be back at home, really, essentially the next month. 3 games in the next 4 weeks. Arkansas, Tennessee, the open date, and then LSU on November 4th. So some good time to settle in here to Tuscaloosa, and it's time to get to work for the Crimson Tide football team, preparing for Saturday's opponent, the Arkansas Razorbacks. As we started our week here in Tuscaloosa, it was Coach Saban having his Monday press conference at the Malmore Athletics Center, and he set the table for what's coming up this week against Arkansas as we take a look at Coach's checklist.
I think the biggest thing that we want to focus on is build on the positives of the good things that our team did in the last game. You know, competitive spirit did a lot of good things in terms of being able to pass the ball effectively in the game, make some explosive plays. You know, defense did a pretty good job for the most part. So, you know, obviously, you know, there's things that we need to work on, and we want to be positive about how we fix those things in the future so that we can continue to progress as a team. You know, Arkansas is, you know, really a good team. They've had some really tough games, some really close losses, but they've scored a lot of points. You know, KJ Jefferson is a really good big-time quarterback, big guy, hard to sack, can run, very talented arm. You know, Sam does a great job with these guys in terms of their ability to run the ball, whether it's quarterback runs or whatever. They played very aggressively and very well on defense. They've got good specialists, really good kicker. You know, got a good running back. I mean, this is a good team, and I don't think we should be looking at their record and making any kind of judgments on, you know, what they're capable of, because they're capable of scoring points and they're capable of playing really good defense, and they're a very well coached team. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the big thing that you know, we've tried to continue to get him to understand is you got to keep playing the next play. You know, there's not always going to be perfect plays, but whatever happened in the last play is a learning experience for you to grow and get better and focus on what you have to do, you know, the next play. But you cannot allow one play to affect the next play. And that's something that I think he's learned and doing a lot better, staying much more positive, you know, on the sidelines, communicating really well with his teammates and the coaches in terms of what he saw, what he didn't see, what he needs to do to get it corrected. So I think that's, you know, something that comes a little bit with experience, but I think it also comes with awareness, and I think we're making good progress in both areas. Yeah, well, you know, the defensive players have played hard. They've been a really, you know, solid group from an attitude standpoint, and you know, they practice well, they try to prepare well, and you know, they've played well together and done a good job of minimizing mental errors. We didn't have a lot of mental errors in the last game. I mean, Terrion got kind of thrown into a bad spot with minimal reps when Malachi went down. So, but other than that, you know, the guys have been really doing a good job of preparing and minimizing mistakes, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to do that.
In the beginning was Daytona.
Here we go.
The birthplace of speed, the launch pad of legends, the great American race.
Oh, they're in the wall.
It's always been,
Keep digging. Stay in the gas.
and will always be, the proving ground for greatness.
Let's go, boys.
Every driver looking to be remembered. Every fan looking for something they'll never forget. Secure your seats now at Daytona500.com.
Each week here on Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR, we really enjoy the opportunity to talk to our Alabama legends. Last week, a great conversation with Jackie Sherrill, and this week we also go to the Bryant era, but a little bit later in the Bryant era, back to the late 70s and the early 1980s, and we speak with Crimson Tide quarterback Allen Gray, who helped lead the Crimson Tide to the 1981 SEC Championship. He and Dwight Stevenson will be honored coming up this Saturday for Alabama's game against Arkansas, so a great opportunity to visit with Allen Gray, a great winner at quarterback for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Allen, Roll Tide, how's everything going?
Everything's good. Looking forward to Friday and Saturday, seeing Dwight. Hadn't seen him since the last time we had, I think, our 78 reunion, 78 or 79. Should be a good time. We'll miss Mal. Last time we did this, I think it was one of Saban's first years, and he invited us back. So always good to come back to the capstone.
Absolutely. And for you, let's start with your journey to the capstone from Tampa, Florida. What led you to Alabama? What was your recruitment like?
Well, let's see. When I was recruited, HB Plant, good fond memories of high school days. I was an Alabama boy. My mom and dad, actually, they grew up just outside Montgomery. And so when I was raised, I was born in Mobile. I consider Tampa home, Roger, but I was born in Mobile. So I grew up watching Alabama football, big Alabama fan. So I got down to Tampa. And then when recruiting gets going, Roger, it's crazy. And so God blessed, I sacrificed a lot of my childhood in my life to become very good at football. And most athletes that were successful did as well. And, so when I was a junior, the letters came and the coaches called and the coaches came to visit. And when it came for my senior year, Coach Bryant came to my house, which, when I was at Alabama, we never talked about recruiting. Major and I were roommates, and I never asked him how he got recruited. He never asked me how I got. I just thought everybody did the same as I did. And so Coach Bryant came to my house and recruited me. Curly Hallman was my recruiting coach. And then I didn't take any trips for the season. But when my season was over and Alabama was practicing for the Liberty Bowl, I called Coach Hallman and said, Coach, I'd like to come up for a visit. And so they flew the Alabama plane down. Curly came down on the plane and picked me up in Tampa and flew me back up. We were the only ones on the plane. I was scared to death. We were all guys on the plane. I came up and watched a practice, and I can't remember exactly. I can't remember if Coach Bryant let me sit in the cart with him or something. But when I got to Alabama, I realized that, if a quarterback came in and they sat in the cart with Coach Bryant, everybody kind of looked over and said, who the blankety blank is that? Because that just didn't happen. And after I graduated, I found out that there weren't very many people they flew the plane down. It was a great honor that they did that. And I was a highly recruited QB. But anyway, when I decided to sign with Alabama and I chose that, I'll never forget this. I called Coach Hallman on the phone one night. It was in January, and I said, Coach, send me a playbook. And Coach Hallman said, Alan, we're glad to have you. 3 minutes later, Coach Bryant called me on the phone and he said, Alan, welcome to the university. And we chatted for a little bit and hung up, and that was a special time.
Well, it's certainly a great story about how you got to Alabama. And of course, like you mentioned, the strong Alabama roots you had. What was it like once you finally did arrive in Tuscaloosa and no longer were the Crimson Tide rolling out the red carpet for you, so to speak? You had to work to earn some playing time.
Well, I'll be honest with you. My freshman year, Major walked in. Major was Major. I mean, he was just who he was. He was so good. He played every year. He's just fantastic. Just a super guy to be. I tell you, I just tried to survive the first year. I literally, I didn't know how much. I don't know if I thought about playing football. Look, it was when we got to the dorm, the biggest, baddest, bulliest guy. We got to our room, locked the door. I had to look down the hallway to make sure it was okay to walk to the bathroom. But there was football, and then there were these guys that, we were freshmen. Back, it was the culture. And then when I got on the field, my freshman year, I played okay. I did all right. I played a little bit, but I got hurt my spring of my freshman season. And I was just standing there. Now, look, this isn't anything bad about our team, nothing bad about Alabama. It's the culture that was in place back in the 60s and the 70s. I just didn't know I needed eyes in the back of my head, Roger. But we were running a play, and I had pitched it to one of our running backs, and he was running down. I was running scout team. All freshmen did. We ran scout team. And I was watching, and we were scoring, and one of the defensive guys just came up behind me and hit me right in the middle of the back. It was didn't need to happen, but those kind of things happen because I was a rookie. I was a freshman, but when it happened, it popped my throwing shoulder. And I went in, my whole arm went numb. And I went into the training room, and Coach Goostree and Sang, they just said I had a bruised shoulder. So between you and me and every Alabama fan out there, look, I got the same treatment that every other player did. I got ice and heat for 5 years, but I separated my shoulder. 20 years later, Les Fowler looked at my shoulder and he said, Alan, you popped your AC joint. He said, look, you guys ran a wishbone. You'd have been fine. Now, you wouldn't have been able to throw the ball worth a flip, but you'd be able to run the ball. Well, that's exactly what I did. I ran the wishbone. And I know Coach Bryant told Curley that I was one of the best he ever had. And Curley told me that later. But in order to be the best, Coach Bryant said, I just needed to throw the ball a little bit better. He didn't say a lot better. He just said a little bit better. And Roger, when you have a separated shoulder and you're playing on an SEC and a national championship team against SEC and national championship caliber opponents, if you can't throw it at full speed and 100%, the talent that you're competing with, they're going to take advantage of you. You're going to get a pick. And so anyway, look, hey, when it came to run the wishbone, man, put me in, I'm good to go. When it came to throw the ball, I told him to put in Stedman, put in Walter. I wanted to win the game. Let's put somebody in there that can throw the ball, because quite honestly, hey, look, it took a toll on me.
Certainly did, but he did trust you in some key moments against some really key rivals throughout that 1981 season, starting with Tennessee, a later win in the Iron Bowl against Auburn. What games stand out to you from what turned out to be a championship season as a senior?
Well, my senior year, it's kind of a remarkable story. Whenever I showed up, Scott, Roger, I missed my mile time to begin the year. I don't know if you know that. A lot of people don't know that, but Paul Fields was an up and coming Gardendale QB, and he took off on a 50-second first lap, and he winded me. I think I missed my time by a second or two. But hey, look, I started the season. I was last on the depth chart and had to work my way back up. But Coach Bryant valued leadership, and I was a fifth-year guy, and I traveled every game because I was on special teams. I held extra points, and I was a backup QB at that point. I played a lot. I was a number 2 QB in 1979, 1980. I played a lot. And when we got to Ken Coley started the season off, he was the starter, and we lost a game. And then Coach Bryant, Walter was one of my good friends, Walter Lewis, and Walter started the one game, Southern Miss, and before halftime, Coach inserted me. And after that, I started every game. And so my first game to start was on my father's birthday, which was the third Saturday of October, against Tennessee. And God blessed, I won the ESPN Player of the Game, went out, and everything kind of fell into place. I even threw a touchdown pass. I even threw some balls, and completed them. It was amazing. And I started every game after that. And there's something to be said for on a football team. To be a leader, you have to play. You can lead, but to be a really critical leader, you need to play. And you need to play well. And then all the team, they have confidence in you. And I believe that Coach Bryant saw that. And when he put me in, when I started the rest of those games, we won all those games until the Cotton Bowl. And I did not play 100% of the time. I started those games. In many cases, Walter may have started the second half. But the dynamic between Walter and myself playing, him throwing and me running, it achieved what we needed, and that was we won, and we ended up winning the SEC that year. Now, we didn't win the national championship, but we were in contention, and we had a good defense. We had a good team, but I think when I look back on this, I realized Coach Bryant made every player a better citizen. He prepared us to be better dads, better fathers, better grandfathers. Because of what we went through at Alabama and the adversity and the trials, some players that signed up with us didn't make it 4 years. They left, they quit. But all the guys that stayed, they're in a brotherhood. And when we see them, I don't ever remember whether they were a starter, Roger, or whether they were, they played one or two plays, or they were a walk-on. As far as I'm concerned, they're equal with me. We were all on the team together. We were teammates. And we've lost a few of those now, and I'm 64, but it's always good to get back together and see them.
There are really only a handful of clips that show Coach Bryant in the locker room trying to motivate his team. So for fans that never really got to see it, what kind of motivator was Coach Bryant, whether it's in practice, in the game, halftime adjustments? How did he get you guys ready to play?
Well, I can tell you one thing it's not. If you've watched that, there's a video out right now, I guess on Netflix or whatever, with the Florida at Urban Meyer's era. What's the name of that?
Swamp Kings. Yeah.
Swamp Kings. That was never in our locker room. No way. Coach Bryant, the class he had was just and he really expected that of the players. But we were down at Mississippi State in '80. We lost 6-3. But he came in the locker room and he said, guys, he said, now listen, he said, you need to play a little better in the next half. He said, these guys have been asleep over here for 20 years. Don't wake them up. I didn't know history. I didn't realize we hadn't lost to him in 20 years. Now I know what after the game, the next day when the headline came out, I knew what that meant. But at the time I didn't. But Coach Bryant would come in. Now look, the assistant coaches would, they would get in our individual meetings and talk to us. But usually Coach Bryant had a quiet way of motivating us, and he had prepared us well whenever we came. And there weren't too many times during my tenure where we were behind at halftime. Normally we were up. But in that Mississippi State game, we were. And that was, kind of he just came in and he challenged us, but it was all class. And in most cases, we always responded very, very, very well. And I hate that 6-3 episode. I was part of that. We won. We had a 28-game win streak, and I was one of the guys that owned the team when we lost it. So,
certainly a good story. The next day after games would be over, how many of you guys would get together to watch the Bear Bryant TV show? What did it mean when he would praise your play on that show?
Well, it's funny you asked that. I never watched one Bear Bryant show in my entire career at Alabama. Now, I think some other players did. Many probably did. But now I didn't. And I'm going to tell you why. Because when I hurt my shoulder, my confidence and my I always felt like I disappointed Coach Bryant because I knew the player that I was that he recruited, and I never felt like that player actually played a down at Alabama. And 20 years after I graduated, I realized, Helen, you hit that nail on the head because I had my right arm tied behind my back. I couldn't throw the ball the way I was recruited. The player that he recruited never got on the field in terms of throwing the football. The player he did recruit got on the field and ran the option or the wishbone. And I did that as well as anybody. And when I did play and we put points on the board, it didn't matter whether I scored or not. I could toss it to somebody else. But I will say this, I finally found the A Club, BJ and the bunch, they're doing a great job with the A Club right now. And they send these emails to us, and there's a memory lane down in the email, and it'll show stuff of Coach Stallings and things of Coach Bryant. Well, 2 weeks ago, it had Alabama, Tennessee, or it had the Alabama, Kentucky 1980 Bear Bryant show. It's the first Bear Bryant show I ever saw. And in that 1980 game against Kentucky, we scored 17 points in the first half, and Coach Bryant put me in the third quarter. And on 3 consecutive drives, we put up 21 points, and then he took me out. And the next game, we went to Rutgers. And in Rutgers, he put me in the first drive. We went all the way down, and I tossed it to Major, and Major went in for a touchdown. And so, it was really nice after 40 years to hear Coach Bryant compliment me on the Bear Bryant show. But I never watched it, and I really didn't read the paper for fear that I was going to read something that was going to be negative and not positive. In high school, I read it all the time. I just couldn't wait to get the paper. But when I got to Alabama, because of my injury, I was afraid of what it was going to say.
That's really interesting. Yeah, you would fit in really well with Coach Saban's program with the way he wants the focus to be on the process.
Yeah.
Well, that's certainly good. Well, I have to close with this. We understand there was a very special honor that you saw some when you were a younger player that you finally got as a senior when it came to spring practice, and Coach Bryant telling you to take it in. Could you please tell us that story?
Yeah, every year in spring, I was, when I was a freshman, all of a sudden the whistle blew, and Coach Bryant said, Newsome, take it in. And I turn around. Everybody stopped. And Ozzie Newsome runs off the field. And I'm like, what's going on? And they say, oh, that's Coach Bryant recognizes his leaders that way. And then practices them. And then, a few days later, he sent a defensive player off. Well, my senior year, nobody knew this until the fall. We were going up to Penn State on the plane. But I had gone in and I asked Coach Bryant if my wife and I could get married that summer, which means I'd move out of the dorm and live in an apartment. And I said something to Jack Rutledge and Norma said, "Oh, Alan, you can't get married, and you got to go ask Coach Bryant's permission." I said, "Coach Bryant," I said, "I've already talked to her daddy." Well, Coach Bryant's got to approve this. So I went up to talk to Coach Bryant. He didn't deny it. He just said, "Alan," he said, "look," he said, "got a lot of upperclassmen that are married and not living over in the dorm, and you provide some good leadership. I'd like for you to postpone your wedding until January, till after the bowl game, and stay in the dorm and provide leadership." And my wife and I, we prayed about it. We were going, and so, hey, I told Coach Bryant, "All right, I'll do it." Now that was in the spring. I can't remember the exact date. But I believe that played a part in what Coach Bryant did, because he knew I put the team ahead of myself, and I always did that. And so I was on the field, and next thing I hear is Coach Bryant says, "Great, take it in." Mal, I'm standing by Mal, I was running play, Walter. I just looked at everybody. They all of a sudden got these big grins on their faces. I took off running. I had to cross the track, run under his the tower, and then I had to cross those grass fields, and everybody's yelling at me and cheering. And the only thing I was thinking of is, man, don't trip. Man, don't trip. Make it to the locker room. I got in the locker room and there's nobody there. I'm all by myself. There's no trainers, no managers, no players. I take a shower, I get in the car, I drive right by the practice field. Everybody's out there still practicing. It was fantastic. But Coach Bryant, in his special way, every spring would honor about two players, one on the defense and one on the offense. And I think he did the same with Warren Lyles, and we both ended up being captains. But, that story about me postponing my wedding, I didn't tell any of the players that. None of my teammates knew that until Al Browning wrote an article, and it came out on the Friday when we were headed up to the Penn State game in State College. And I'll never forget, Joey Jones, players started coming back to my seat, and they were shaking my hand, saying thank you. So
doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah.
Well, you were a leader, captain. Again, your cleat marks and your handprints are at the base of Denny Chimes, and we look forward to having you back on campus as an honorary captain. We could spend all day talking, Alan, but really appreciate your insights here with us in the Crimson Tide Sports Network, and just thank you for everything you've done for Alabama athletics. Have a blast coming up on Saturday. Roll Tide.
Roger, thank you.
Crimson Drive is driven by NASCAR, where you can experience the energy and the excitement of the iconic Daytona 500 on February 18th, 2024. Bring your friends and family and witness history in the making. Purchase your tickets today at Daytona500.com. Great conversation with a Crimson Tide legend in Alan Gregg, and look forward to he and Dwight Stevenson being recognized prior to the Arkansas game as our honorary captains for this week. On Mondays here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network on radio, we always have a lot of fun with Crimson Tide Rewind, presented by the Alabama Department of Public Health. Usually, Corey Reamer is with me at Baumhower's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills for the live show. I was there last night. He was away with his family during fall break, so Corey Reamer joined us on the phone, but he gave some great thoughts on what Alabama did well against Texas A&M and what needs to happen coming up this Saturday against Arkansas. Here's what we like to call Be Kind, Crimson Tide Rewind.
Yeah, we'll take it. If that's the way we're going to play this year, I'll take the fact that we're holding offenses to so few points in the second half this year. Kevin Steele and this defense has done a phenomenal job of stepping up and really taking over the ball game in the second half. This was a great effort, going on the road to a hostile environment, and knowing how good this team was in Texas A&M up front, with all the guys that they had across the defensive line, it was going to be interesting to see how this offense was really going to put points on the board. And it was pretty well established early on that it wasn't going to be in the running game, not having much success there. And we talked about it last week previewing this game, that it was really going to come down to Jalen Milroe and being able to attack this secondary, who's been less than stellar for Texas A&M this season. We saw them really get Miami really took it to them in the passing game, and we were going to try to find a way to replicate that. And I think Milroe did a phenomenal job of stepping up, putting up some career numbers in the passing game. Him and Jermaine Burton had a phenomenal day, along with Isaiah Bond. This was an awesome effort. You got to be proud of this team. Not a lot of people going in this game gave us a fighter's chance to come out with a win on the road in this conference, and they showed up to play. These guys handled the adversity. Not everything went their way, but they showed up and played and fought all the way to the very end, and it took a huge conversion in those last 2 minutes for us to put this game away, and they came away with it.
Heard a Chris Stewart highlight of another catch by Jermaine Burton. He ended up having 9 catches, 197 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was a pivotal player in this victory over the Aggies.
Yeah, he definitely was. It was great to have him back. We didn't see him a lot last week against Mississippi State, and he showed up in this game in a big way. And you could tell early on that was going to be Milroe's target for the day. And they kept feeding them. And whenever you find a hot hand like Jermaine Burton had, it was just great to see him come down with the football. And a lot of them were contested throws as well. Contested throws, contested catches. He went up there like he was a man on a mission trying to prove something. And it was a perfect game for us for him to really have a breakout game. Him along with Isaiah Bond. This wide receiver group has come a long way this season. And this was a great game for us to have. And we knew that this was going to be a tough one going into it. If we weren't able to establish the run, it was going to be really put on Jalen Milroe and his arm and these wide receivers to keep us in this ball game. And a lot of back and forth and some big plays that happened. I think Jalen Milroe had like 7 or 8 passes that were over 15, 20 yards. And we really attacked this secondary for Texas A&M, who's shown a lot of weaknesses. But great to have Jermaine Burton back in the lineup, playing a lot more after some limited snaps last week after his undisclosed injury, and he showed up in a big way.
How important is it to have somebody in that receiving corps step up and have the kind of game like Jermaine Burton had, like Isaiah Bond had? Because for the most part, the catches have been pretty even. The yardage has been pretty even for a lot of Alabama's receivers or tight ends or running backs getting involved in the passing game.
Yeah, it's huge, and we've gotten kind of accustomed to having that go-to guy in the past, especially the last 5, 6, 7 years. We've got wide receivers that are littered all over the NFL, and a lot of these quarterbacks had wide receivers that multiple guys that they could go to. They didn't have to rely on one guy. This group last year and this year, there's not really been that guy that separated themselves, which is you've seen a lot of the quarterback situation, spreading the ball out to a lot of these different guys. And Jermaine Burton we've always known he had the ability and the talent to be that number one wide receiver for these quarterbacks. And he really proved it. And he's been playing well this season, and he showed up in a big way. But this is, as fast as we knew, we talked about it last week going into this game with the defensive front that Texas A&M had, how much pressure they were going to be able to get on the quarterback, and they did have some success, but a lot of it was going to come, from Jalen Milroe getting the ball out of his hands very quickly. And when you have to do that, you've got to trust somebody because you're throwing it to a spot. You're throwing it to an area. You're not waiting for a guy to get open. You're throwing it on a timing route for a wide receiver. You're throwing it down the sideline on a fade route, and you're trusting your wide receiver to go make a play. And then he's going to be there to fight for the ball and come down with it. And that was, you could tell that Jalen Milroe felt comfortable with Jermaine Burton being that guy in this game. And he played phenomenal. It was great to see the success that we were able to have through the air, given the struggles that we've had this season in the passing game. And, last week only throwing it for 12 times, and we turn around this week and throw it for 31. So it just shows that this team's capable of having multiple looks. They're able to be very dynamic. They can run the ball when they've got the ability to run it, or if we've got to, Jalen Milroe can throw it for 31 times and have, a career day in passing yards. That's good to see for this team going forward with a tough schedule that we've still got remaining in the SEC.
Will Reichard is named the SEC Special Teams Player of the Week because not only was he 1 for 1 on a field goal, but he also punted for the Crimson Tide after James Burnip went out with injury. Just Reichard was counted on a lot this past Saturday, and he stood up tall to the challenge.
Yeah, it was shocking to see when Burnham goes down and you've got Will Reichert coming in to punt the ball. We hadn't seen that since 2019, his freshman year, having to go out there and be on the part of the punt team. Not sure exactly when that injury happens to Burnham, but it really kind of made me nervous knowing what kind of game we were going to be involved with. And you mentioned it last week on this show as we were previewing this game, and we talked about it in the pregame too, that flipping field position was going to be huge, especially when you're on the road against a good defense like we were facing in Texas A&M. When I saw Burnham that he wasn't going to be returning heading into the locker room, it made me a little bit nervous. But I tell you what, Will Reichert's got a future in kicking or in punting. He got in there and handled his business just like he's been doing it for his entire career. And luckily we weren't having to rely on him too much in the kicking game from a field goal standpoint. We were able to put the ball in the end zone when we had the opportunity. And but, yeah, hopefully Burnham is coming back because he's been a huge weapon for us this year. This guy's really turned it around in terms of, what he was able to average from a punting perspective last year to what he's been able to do this year. The first punt coming off the side of his foot, a little shaky, kind of like a shank, ended up giving Texas A&M some pretty good field position after that first one. But Will Reichert came in and he boomed a couple balls, put some to the back of the end zone. Hopefully if he's called on to do it for the rest of the season, he can have repeat performances like he did this past week.
Certainly would be good to see. And somebody that was back for this Crimson Tide defense after missing the Mississippi State game with injury and also time against Ole Miss, Deontay Lawson. He comes back, has 5 tackles, and again was just at the center of everything it felt like for this Tide defense.
Yeah, he was the guy that showed up in a big way. You could tell he was missed, and you got to give it to Campbell and to Trez Marshall. Those guys played well in his absence, but a guy like him, the leadership that he brings to the game, and especially in a situation like this, you could tell he was getting after some guys during the game on Saturday, and that's what you're hoping for him to bring as well as his play on the field. And there was a lot of ups and downs in this game, back and forth. Alabama didn't have this game in hand until late into the fourth quarter, and it took his leadership from the defensive side of the ball. He was flying all over the place, making plays everywhere, and you just miss his presence. Even, obviously 5 tackles, he had a good day, but he was involved in a lot. But having him back was huge, just from being in the huddle, a guy that brings that leadership aspect to this defense. And that Kevin Steele and Coach Saban had to feel a lot more comfortable with having him back in terms of being that play caller that's out there, making sure we get a lot of the right checks. We didn't know what Bobby Petrino and this offense was going to throw at us, and they caught us a few times with some miscues. But for the most part, this defense played sound, and those guys were getting after it. It was good to see Deontay back.
Even talk about it, the Arkansas Razorbacks, despite 4 losses in a row coming into Saturday's matchup in Tuscaloosa, pretty good football team. They've really been in every game they've lost down the stretch against LSU, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, and even going back a few weeks into non-conference play against BYU.
Yeah, this is always a tough game for Alabama. I mean, you just look back to all the years that we've played them in Tuscaloosa and at their place. This is a game that's typically come down to the wire, and it's always a physical game. This team is always pretty tough, and you've got a guy, KJ Jefferson, who's a quarterback that's been around, probably one of the most experienced quarterbacks in this league. And then Rock Sanders, assuming he gets healthy, he's been banged up here for the last few weeks, is one of the biggest playmakers that we've seen in this conference in a long time. This is just a tough game. Sam Pittman is a guy that gets his team ready to go. They play tough for him. They love playing for him, and they've got a lot of grit about them. Like you said, a lot of their games here recently have just come down to the very end. It's 1-score, maybe 2-score games. They've been in most of them, and they've had a little tough run as of late. But they're a quality team. We've got to be ready to go. And what he said of not looking at their record, I think that's probably going to be the case for us every single week, given the fact that this is not a team that Alabama fans are used to and going out there and just dominating from start to finish. This is a team that's probably going to make you pull your hair out a few times. It's always going to have some back and forth going on with it. You hope to see us finally put together a complete game, but we haven't done that, all season long, minus maybe Mississippi State. is probably the best win that we've got so far. And we know that anytime you play in the SEC, especially in this Western Division, anybody can beat you. And people still take pride in being able to hang their hat on beating Alabama whenever they get the opportunity. And you know Sam Pittman's going to be ready for that whenever he gets the chance.
Huge thank you to Corey Reamer for his time last night on Crimson Tide Rewind. Again, always a fun show on Mondays at Baumhauer's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills. That's what really started our week of programming here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Now let's take a look at what's coming up. Thanks to our friends at Wickles Pickles. They are wickedly delicious. We have the relish, we have the pickle chips, always with us on set. So many different varieties, so many ways to have fun with Wickles Pickles at wickelspickles.com. Let's see what's coming up on the Crimson Tide Sports Network this week. Well, coming up tomorrow, we will have plenty of clips, of course, on all of our CTSN social media platforms, so stay tuned for that. But also, we will have new editions of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR, streaming again like today at 2 p.m. here on all of our social media platforms, including an interview with Jalen Milroe and Nick Dunlap, the winner of the U.S. Amateur this year, Crimson Tide star golfer. You don't want to miss those, along with Eli Gold and Chuck Barrett from the Razorbacks. So we will have that coming up on Thursday's edition of Crimson Drive, along with a new episode of Tide TV This Week, hosted by Kenzie Hughes. And then Eli Gold is back to host Hey Coach and the Nick Saban Show, starting at 6:30. We look forward to catching up with Eli again coming up on Crimson Drive as well. Friday, we'll have our Arkansas game preview on Instagram and YouTube, a quick video with some highlight clips from the week. Then on Saturday, wake up early. It's time for football. We'll be up early, 8 a.m. from the CTSN broadcast booth at Bryant-Denny Stadium, leading you up to that 11 a.m. kickoff for the Crimson Tide against the Arkansas Razorbacks, as we are at the midway point of SEC football. We're already past the midway point of the regular season, and the Crimson Tide in pretty good shape. On Sunday, we'll have the Nick Saban television show all across the state and later archived on the Alabama Athletics YouTube channel. Coach Saban breaking down the game with Chris Stewart, and it's a home game, so he'll have his play of the game. Watch out for that as well. Then on Monday, again, we'll have what we just heard a little bit ago, Crimson Tide Rewind. Corey Reamer and I from Baumhauer's in Vestavia Hills. Should be a lot of fun with everything coming up on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. That's a look at our upcoming schedule, presented by Wickles Pickles. That's going to do it for this edition of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. Thank you for sticking with us. There are a few technical internet difficulties that we've had throughout today, but still a really fun show anytime we get to talk to a current Crimson Tide player like Justin Eboigbe, as well as one of the legends of Alabama football, Alan Gray, plus all the other content we've had, the Booth Camp highlights, coaches checklist, and Crimson Tide Rewind. Really fun edition of this Tuesday show, and again, we look forward to being back coming up on Thursday at 2 p.m. Thanks to our producer, Ethan Carabin, for putting this show together, and thanks to all of you for watching. For all of us with the Crimson Tide Sports Network, this is Roger Hoover saying so long and roll Tide.